Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jasmine Dotiwala, and welcome to the RTS Futures First 5 Years in TV Masterclass. RTS Futures holds free monthly events for graduates and those in early stages of their TV careers. We cover a wide variety of inspiring topics all across TV output. We have drama, comedy, journalism, reality. Through all our events, we provide top tips and guidance on everything from CV writing to networking to help you on your way. So thank you for joining us today. I have over 25 years of experience as a head of department, manager, broadcaster, producer, director, and columnist at brands like Netflix UK, Media Trust, Channel 4 News, MTV, and more. And I've trained hundreds of young people like you all from across the UK, nations and regions into TV production roles in the industry throughout my career. In fact, I'm joined today by 4 of my former trainees from across TV production who are now all working across TV at various levels, and they're going to talk about what their first 5 years were like, which skills they know were the most needed, any top tips to get you all ahead, any regrets they might have, any nightmare stories, what lessons they might have learned, and also what they'd avoid if they were making the journey again from the start. Can I ask if you have any Q&A questions? We're going to do them around 1:45, 1:50. So if you would pop them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, so not in the chat box, but the Q&A box, that would be wonderful. So let's begin. Getting a career in TV is so different in 2022 compared to a couple of decades ago when I first started. And I think the first 5 years can be crucial make or break times. The routes are really non-traditional now. The expert skills that you need and value are really, really varied. And this first 5 years when you first get in can be really daunting and really different from everyone, but some areas do remain stable. And I think you'll get a really good insight today from our panel who are thriving in TV production now at their various companies. So let's meet them. Funmi Olutoye is a multimedia journalist who currently works at Good Morning Britain at ITV as a news features producer. At GMB, she's part of the team Gets the Nation talking about the most topical and fiery debates of the day. She also leads on special projects such as VTs, the cost of living crisis, to VTs about Black History Month. She previously worked at London Live as a video journalist covering multiple stories, everything from reporting live from crime scenes to self-shooting gallery exhibitions to presenting live to our Notting Hill Carnival shows. I remember watching that. Funmi also worked at various regions of ITV News across the country, sourcing local stories for the evening, local and news programmes. Thanks for joining us. Michael Sheridan's an assistant producer at Channel 4 and chair of social media director for the channel's climate network, For Earth. He also presents the Edinburgh TV Festival podcast, Get With the Programme. And previously, he's worked with Netflix, the BBC, ITV, and a range of independent production companies. Michael's also passionate about using media to make positive social change, to uplift unheard voices, and address the climate crisis. Thanks for joining us, Michael. Fozia Nasir is a factual producer and editor-producer working in documentaries. She's experienced in working across sensitive access areas and vulnerable contributors. Fozia's series and single titles include BBC One's Tom Daley, Illegal to Be, BBC Two's Tan France, Beauty and the Bleach, and she's currently producing on BBC One's The Met Policing London, due to air next year. And finally, Jordaan Shelley is a producer at Good Morning Britain on ITV, working across fast session debates, live news and original journalism. Formerly, she was at ITN, where she notably worked as a guest producer on the Jeremy Vine show, ensuring that the show had exciting and diverse ranges of talent and voices. Please welcome our panel who will today share how they got in, how they stayed in, how they navigate a freelance TV landscape, how they've managed the stress of their roles, how to get spotted for promotions, more importantly, also when you know it's time to leave your job and move up to the next one. And we'll be talking about everything. The good, the bad, and the ugly is what this seminar is called, and that's what we'll be sharing. Thank you for joining us, panel. I wanted to start off with asking each of you just briefly to tell us why you wanted to work in TV, your current job at your company, and what you do. So shall we kick off with Jordaan? You're on mute.
had to happen, didn't it? So to start off, I wanted to work in television because I'd always really been interested in the idea of telling stories and being involved in media, and sort of also was excited by that idea of live television. And so that kind of is what led me onto the path to get involved in TV, albeit at the beginning I wasn't sure exactly the right sort of path, or, you know, we'll get into more of that later, I suppose. And at the moment, as Jasmine mentioned, I'm at Good Morning Britain with my colleague Funmi, which is great. And yes, working on the news features desk, where we work a lot on fast turnaround debates, but again, longer term projects, which are really exciting. We've got a lot of interesting stuff coming up at the moment.
Michael?
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to work in TV because I'm passionate about social impact and making a difference, essentially, and representation and all those kinds of things. So my current job is I'm an assistant producer at in 4 Studio, which is Channel 4's social media and digital department. And so I basically work on all of the back catalogue archive Channel 4 shows. So your favourites that you'll, you know, associate with the Channel 4 brand, like The In-Betweeners, Derry Girls, etc. And my job is to essentially make those titles relevant again. And then I also kind of look after acquisitions as well. So that's shows that Channel 4 buy from abroad. And we basically produce social video content for different platforms to engage that audience. And then aside from that, I also run our climate staff network for Earth, which is all about engaging the entire channel on climate and social justice issues. And yeah, about taking a stance on that. And that's me. Thank
you. Fozia?
Similar to Jordan, I really wanted to tell people's stories. I have a real curiosity about people and where they're from and their backstory. Didn't quite know where that would land. And when I sort of worked with Jasmine on London 360 at Media Trust, I soon realised that this was the realm that I wanted to be in. It had variety. You know, I was able to hunt for stories, shoot, edit, was really across the process, you know, was in the office, on location. So I love that variety and excitement, and working on subject matter that felt really contemporary, and you felt that, you know, people were really in tune with what you were talking about and had opinions, and that was really exciting. So that sort of was my first reasons of why I wanted to join the industry.
For me.
So I wanted to join the industry purely from a lifestyle perspective. So I was actually inspired by X Factor. I saw the show and I thought, this is an amazing show. You get to meet different types of people, you get to talk to different types of people, and you get to kind of tell stories from an image perspective. And so I really kind of looked into the different kind of people who make such a show. And so when I looked more into it, and I saw that a lot of people actually came from a journalism background, that's what kind of inspired me to get into the industry, because I knew that I'd be able to not just be kind of sitting in an office, just as Fozia said, it's kind of a bit of a mix between the two. You can be on location, you can be in the office, you do get to meet hundreds more people than you would in any other kind of job. And so, yeah, that's the main thing that inspired me. And so I'm also at Good Morning Britain, just as Jordan said. I work on the same desk, the news features desk, where we work on debates and work on special projects, work on VTs. And so to this day, I'm still meeting different people and still being between location and being in the office as well.
Well, for me, interestingly enough, you mentioned qualifications, and I wanted all of you to just mention briefly, because I get asked all the time by young people, do we need specific qualifications to do the job that you do? And what skills are needed in this role? So Funmi, do you want to just pick up on what qualifications you had, how relevant you think they were to your role today? And if the rest of you could also think about that, that'd be wonderful. Jump in.
Yeah, sure. So I did an English degree at University of Birmingham. And the reason why I did that was because I basically looked at all journalists and saw what they did. And they pretty much all did English, politics or history. So I thought, I'm pretty good at English, let me just go with that. But if I had my time again, I probably wouldn't necessarily need to do that. I think you can probably do any type of degree that you wanted to, anything that you're interested in. And then afterwards, I went and did an NCTJ, which is basically a qualification, which is the National Council of Training Journalists, which basically teaches you how to report, teaches you about public affairs. So basically, constitutionally, how the UK is made up, you know, from judges to the Queen to, you know, how the House of Commons is, all that kind of stuff, teaches you about media law, teaches you about a variety of things, which basically makes you almost ready to, you know, enter a newsroom and hit the ground running. I think that is useful if you can afford it, obviously, because it's not cheap. But it's not the only way in. You know, there are plenty of people in my newsroom, plenty of people in other newsrooms who haven't done an NCTJ and know that stuff through other means that allows you to still get a foot in the door. There are still some companies that will kind of insist on you doing that, especially if you're working in a news environment. But if you want to get into TV production in general, I don't think the NCTJ is, you know, that paramount for you.
And what are the skills that you need in your role?
Oh, skills, yeah, of course. So I think definitely you have to be multimedia. I remember Jasmine saying that from day one when we were trainees with her, you have to be multi-skilled. I think especially in this day and age where people are bouncing between being in TV and being digital, you have to be able to, you know, be able to shoot, be able to edit, be able to research. You have to almost be able to do almost every, you know, role within a newsroom or within a TV production company, and be almost indispensable, because that way, you know, regardless of what happens or whatever is happening financially with the company, more than likely you will be able to be the person that stays because you can do every role within the crew, so to speak. So I always say to people that I mentor, you know, you definitely need to know how to edit as much as you can, know how to shoot, and definitely need to be able to write copy, because you never know where you'll be put within a production company or a newsroom where you'll utilize one of those three skills.
And what about the rest of you? What were your skills that maybe, you know, you need in your job today, and did you need your qualifications for it? Fozia?
For me, I did a BA in English, and that actually in television, I work mainly in documentaries. It's really good was helpful for working in development. So development is the area you're working when you're generating ideas, you're pitching ideas to commissioners, BBC, Channel 4, Netflix, etc. And they often require for you to write pitch decks and, you know, story breakdowns. How would an episode look? So coming from a background, having done an English degree, that lent itself well to that. But having said that, a lot of the skills that I acquired that made me sort of equipped to work in TV came from on the ground work experience. You know, working with Jasmine at London 360, I did various internships. You know, those sort of skills that you learn on the job are really indispensable. You know, things like communication skills and picking up the phone. And, you know, I remember when I first started out, that was quite daunting, being in an office junior and you're picking up the phone and you're having a conversation with a contributor, and everyone can hear your conversation, and that you build that confidence. But things like that, I felt, you know, being in the office, learning on the ground from my senior team members, really useful. But also having a mix of skills. So, you know, I work with people who've come from journalistic backgrounds or did a journalistic degree, who've then transferred into working in documentaries, and those skills have served them well in terms of hunting for stories. So, you know, I find working with a mix of people, and you don't necessarily have to come from a traditional route. I've worked with people who've, you know, been teachers or worked in social care, and they've come into the industry and worked on specific projects about social care because they have that really privileged knowledge, but haven't necessarily, you know, gone to university or, you know, have done a media degree.
Great.
I think, oh, sorry.
Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, I think, yeah, so for me, I studied television and radio at Salford Uni. And for me, so I'm from a working class town up north of England, in the middle of nowhere, really. And so for me, I think my career has kind of been less about my degree and more about being in a city like Manchester and like Salford that has opportunities and that has networking and has events on and people I can chat to and all that kind of thing. So I think it's been more about kind of being in those places and being able to get into those rooms and being able to get work experience and network and contacts and all those kind of things than it has necessarily about the degree. So I don't think a degree is necessarily necessary anymore, necessary. And as well, you know, some of the really great people that I've worked with at Channel 4 as well haven't necessarily studied anything to do with TV. They've just been really great at knowing about different social media platforms. And then when it comes to skills, I think being able to spot trends is a really great one for all types of media, and being able to understand the different social platforms, the differences between them, kind of what the audiences want on the different platforms, what works best. And then being able to kind of make your own opportunities as well. So kind of being creative is obviously a big, massive one as well. And then also being able to kind of manage different people's opinions and being able to work with people. I have to go through a lot of sign-off sometimes from various different people, legal people, people at production companies, and people at various positions in Channel 4 as well. So it's all that kind of skills I think are really helpful too.
Jordaan?
I mean, would echo most of what's been said, but I don't think, I mean, I did English as well at university. I don't necessarily think that you need a degree to go into television, but I do think it depends what sort of sector you want to go into. So for instance, if you want to work in a newsroom, I don't know, like Channel 4 News or BBC or even GMB or something like that. I mean, I would be lying if I didn't say, didn't say that if you have a journalism degree, not that I have one, but if you do, it does give you an edge. And I think people sort of feel like they can almost trust you that, oh, she or he or they have done, a journalism degree, so we'd be in safe hands if we hired them. I think it definitely would give you an edge. But if you're going into something else like short form content, longer form content, or whatever it may be, then I don't think it's necessary. But I also think that as well, that networking is such a huge part of it. It's almost like more important than any kind of training you've done, because just meeting people and finding out about jobs or finding out about opportunities or work experience or placements, all of those kind of things are so helpful. It's not easy. That's almost one of the hardest parts of it, to be honest, networking, but it can be so helpful. And just in terms of skills, very briefly, I think that being organized and having attention to detail is so important, because you could be, you could have amazing ideas and be so talented, but if you're not organized and meticulous with things, it can really trip you up. And you need to be reliable. I mean, like Funmi will know that at the moment on our team, we're working on so many different things because it's the rush up to Christmas. And if we weren't organized at the moment, I mean, Funmi and I are working on about 18 different shoots at the moment we've got to get done in the next couple of weeks. And if we weren't organized, it's absolutely not going to happen. So definitely don't underestimate, being as organized as you can.
So we've had organization as a skill, we've had being creative, we've had picking up the phone, having the courage to do that. I imagine most people on this call are looking to get into the industry. So let's talk about getting in. Perhaps any top tips about what you did to get in, and just to be managing people's expectations. How many CVs, cold calls, how many applications did you have to apply for before you got that first big break? Because I sometimes mentor young people who apply for 2 jobs and they go, oh, no one got back to me, so I've stopped and I've given up. What's the reality of when you get that first big break? You've all got a very knowing snigger on your face, so I can imagine what are the numbers? So who wants to take that first? What's the percentage of hit and miss rates, and what are any top tips to get in there? So one that I always say to people is, don't forget, a human being doesn't see your CV and cover letter first. If you're going for a huge media company like the BBC, Netflix, Channel 4, it's an algorithm that is first looking at your CV and application form. So whatever it says in the job description, you should verbatim be using the same language, phrases and words within your cover letter and CV, which means that naturally every CV and cover letter needs to be different and bespoke for each job role. So I think a lot of people knock out the same CVs for every single role they get and then wonder why they didn't get a response. Who wants to take that one first? percentage of hit and miss rates for applications?
I can go first.
Go ahead.
Well, first of all, what I will say is, in your email, create a rejections folder. That's what I did. And when you get your rejections, you file it in that folder and draw a line and call it a day, because you will definitely have more rejections than you get acceptances. And that's how the industry is, and that will never change. I'm not saying that that's a good thing or good for your ego, but that is exactly what is going to happen. So get used to getting rejected. That's what I would say. What I did when I first started was I did that. I created a rejections folder and I would just file it all under there. In terms of percentage rate, I want to say, obviously it's less now the older you are in the industry and the more you go through. But when I was first getting in, I want to say like maybe every 20 to 25 people I emailed, maybe one might respond. And even if that one responded, they may not give me an opportunity, or they'll say, email me in 3 months or whatever. So the percentage rate in terms of how you get in, or, you know, how successful you'll be this early in your career is pretty low. But I think that's also a test of your mettle and a test of whether you're tenacious enough to even withstand being in this industry. Because there's many people that I started with who are no longer here. And it's just, the difference is, it's not because I'm more talented or more whatever, it's just that I had more tenacity to kind of stay and stick with it and almost swallow my pride, so to speak, when I did get those rejections, because I know those rejections are not necessarily a reflection of who I am or what I bring to the table. It could just be how the market is at the moment, but you've got to believe in yourself. And as I tell one of my mentees at ITV, you've got to believe in your source and know that there will be someone who will take on the skills and talents that you can bring to the table.
Wonderful. And just to say also that all of these training programs that you're hearing our panel speak about, there are hundreds of training programs that are free all across the country. So don't think, oh, well, how do I do that training program? If you look online, the RTS often share, you know, places like Creative Skill Set or Creative Access or Media Trust, Fully Focused. There are lists and lists and lists of them, so you should never have to pay for them. Michael, what would you say about top tips for interviews and where to find those entry-level TV jobs?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that just going back to how many kind of applications and things like, yeah. So I did a presentation at work recently about my career to date and how I started out and all those kinds of things. So I actually took the liberty of spending a couple of hours going through every single email I'd ever sent since whilst being at uni for the 3 years, and it was 916 was how many people I'd actually contacted over the 3 years. And yeah, I mean, that was, you know, some of those led to job opportunities, some of those led to work experience. But that was, I mean, that's probably over the top, to be fair. I wouldn't recommend reaching out to that many. I did this when I started this when I was like 18 as well. So yeah, so that was a real lot to kind of reach out to. But yeah, I think it's about when you reach out to people, kind of having a bit of an idea about what you might get out of being able to chat to them. And it's not, and I think sometimes, you know, you don't always expect an opportunity to come of it. It might just be a chat, but it's always an interesting insight. And you never know as well that when you meet someone, they might know someone who knows someone who knows someone, and that kind of thing.
What made your applications and emails stronger then when you finally got through that first big break?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was about kind of being like maybe being authentic in terms of when you're kind of writing these sort of things, like, you know, just understanding that the person on the other side is also, you know, a person who's had all different experiences and, you know, might know what it's like to be in your situation and all that kind of thing. And I think it's always good to keep a log of every experience that you've got, every learning that you've had. I have like a list in my phone of things that I've learned and different things I've taken part in. Like even just taking part in this panel will go on a list somewhere that I can, you know, maybe circle back to during an interview or, you know, during a job application or something. So I think it's really good to keep a list of all of your achievements and experiences, because it's also, you know, as we were discussing, the kind of resilience as well and the knockbacks that you're going to get. It's good to keep a log of the things that have actually gone well, because I think most people's minds tend to focus on what's not gone well. So it's good to have a log of the things that have worked out.
Absolutely. I'd like all of you to think about your own companies and what positions and opportunities there might be there, and talk a little bit about how young new people could get entry-level access into the companies that you work for, and perhaps thinking about our traditional CVs and cover letters, the way most of those opportunities present themselves, or how else can they be successful. Fozia, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so I work at BBC Studios, and they do a variety of genres, so documentaries, factual entertainment, live events, and we have core talent manager team here. So basically, talent managers are your entry point into jobs. Whenever there's a vacancy here, it's the talent manager who have their ears to the ground and will be looking for certain people with certain skills and roles. So I would, to get into BBC Studios, there are a few ways you can, find out who the talent managers are here in the genre that you're interested in. And even if there isn't a role, emailing them, expressing your interest in why you want to work at studios and trying to get a meeting with them. I would push for in person, now that restrictions are lifted, people are coming into the office more often, because that in-person meeting, I think, is really important. People get more of a sense of you. But if not, do it over Zoom, but definitely try to open up those conversations, because then you start to become on their radar. Also, alternatively, if you want to be bold, is, programs that you really like watching. If there's an exec here who's made that particular program and you're really passionate about that, sending them an email and sort of writing a compliment about why you love that program so much, and how it's inspired you, to show that you're really interested and you've thought about program making and storytelling, and it shows you're really keen, and trying to set up a meeting there. So it might not necessarily be a job that they have advertised, that you're reaching out for. It could be that you were just trying to get your name into the BBC Studios, or you just want to make a connection because there might not be an opportunity now, but maybe in a few months something might come up and they will remember you.
Thank you, Fozia. And on that point, can one of the rest of you jump in, but also reply to some of these questions? So I'll tell you, Andy Davis would like to know, at this point, is there a line between chasing a dream or being a pest to a company when you're trying to find that first job? Funmi, what say you?
Oh, that is such a good question, because as I said earlier, it is about being tenacious, but it's also about being bold. And actually, if they don't get back to you because they feel like you're pestering them, then perhaps that's just not the company for you. I think, the execs and the senior producers of this world who are more understanding of young people trying to come into the industry will respond to you, especially if you can demonstrate to them that you have a particular skill or particular access to a community, for example, that they're looking for. They will respond to you, because look, we all want to make great telly. Regardless of where that comes from, whether it's from someone at the very top or someone from the very bottom who can give us access to, like I said, a community that maybe a lot of us on the team don't have, we will still want to respond to such a person, because we're all trying to make great telly. So I think at this day and age, knowing what I know 10 years in or 5 years in, I would just keep going and be tenacious. And if they seem like they're being pestered, well then, whatever, move on to the next one. That's what I would say.
Jordaan, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think it's also about knowing who the right person to speak to is. So obviously, if you're emailing like the editor of a desk, obviously don't expect them to get back to you and say, yeah, come in next week, because they just don't have the time realistically. But just make sure you're speaking to the right person. Again, talent managers, as it's already been said, things like that. But also don't be afraid to, I would say, like, take a sideways step. So if you may have your heart set on, being whatever, I don't know, let's say a junior researcher somewhere, or a researcher, you're adamant on getting that role, but a runner role sort of opens itself up on something slightly similar, or in the same company but on a different program. I would always say take those things, because sometimes you have to go sideways to go forward, and actually that can open up a lot of stuff, instead of just sort of saying, well, I'm not going to consider that because I don't want to, I don't want to do that. I would consider it, because you never know, you might be in that job 2 weeks and then they might need somebody as a researcher, but you'll be there. So that's what I would say that's really important to remember as well.
And just in terms of Channel 4, if you Google 4 skills, there's a range of different things on there, and Channel 4 has offices not just in London but also Bristol, Glasgow, Manchester, Leeds. I think that's all of them. So there's opportunities right across the UK as well. We have things like apprenticeships, we have a production training scheme, we have work experience, we have content creatives, which is kind of working within 4 Studio, the department I work in, to make social digital content. So yeah, there's a range of different opportunities across the UK, and that's just called 4 skills.
So there are so many opportunities out there for everyone at all these big TV companies and broadcasters. So we've talked about getting in, we've talked about the fact that there are training and apprenticeship programs. Now let's talk about staying in. So I always try and train my mentees to be consistently delightful. I always say we've all got a lot of stress, we've got lots of things happening, but just while you're in the presence of your team at work, just be consistently delightful. Everything is a yes, it's being friendly, it's having open body language, it's making eye contact and being positive, and being appearing to be willing to do anything to help, within the boundaries of the law and everything legal. So what would you say are top tips to stay in from your own experience? We talk about making teas and coffees, but what else would you add to that for me?
One thing I'll add that might be a bit of a side thing. It's also about your own kind of self-belief, because I know when I first entered the industry in the first 5 years, one thing I really struggled with was about self-confidence or imposter syndrome. That was a big thing for me. And actually being able to push through that and seeing other people who didn't push through that, that was really the difference between those of us who stayed in the industry and those who didn't. So even though there are practical things, as Jasmine was saying, in terms of being really nice and being delightful and being helpful, those are all kind of external things. But I think also you need to think about internally, how much do you really want this? And even when you get through or come across challenges within the workplace, it's really important to remember who you are as an individual, and whatever kind of issues that come up, or whatever kind of maybe mistakes that you make, or maybe you don't make any mistakes and it's just literally just imposter syndrome. It's really important to remember who you are as an individual, because that's what will carry you through right through into where we all are now, which is kind of like middle of our career. So just to reiterate, I think it's really important to believe in your source and believe in who you are.
I'd second that.
Staying in tips from you, Michael?
I was going to say, yeah, I'd second that point about kind of bringing your whole authentic self to work. Obviously it's really important to be professional, but also because everyone's an individual, has their own experiences, different backgrounds, so I think it's always great to know who you are, know your personal brand, know what you can offer, and because everyone has different perspectives, and everyone's perspectives are can be really interesting, so I think it's really important to bring your whole self. And it's just easier to be nice than to not be nice, isn't it? So just be really enthusiastic, it's really good to be like friendly with everybody, and when those opportunities arise, to have a chat with somebody about what you might like to do in the future, always take those opportunities. That's not to say maybe it might not be a good idea to talk to absolutely everyone you meet about what you want to do and where you want to be, but when the time is right, it's always good to have those conversations. And as well, even just ask for chats with people. Most people won't decline a coffee or a chat.
I think, Michael, you are probably the most positive, active networker I have ever come across when it comes to newer, younger people in television. Michael meets someone once, and before the end of the call or the end of the meeting, there will be an email or a social media message. Michael's already hooked them, and they're hooked by him too. So that's a great networking skill to have. Fozia, were you going to jump in there?
Yeah, I'm just echoing Michael there. I think it's really to stay in is to keep in touch with people. So for every job that you've worked at, whoever line managed you, Make sure you get time in with them before you leave to express, what you loved about the job, what you're interested in. Don't be shy about what your ambitions are. Express what you want to do. No one will care more about your career than you will. This is a very transient industry. People move around very quickly. You work with a lot of different people. So from the moment you're in it, you are starting to build your network. And you never know who you might start working with, and your first job might be the person that gives you your break several jobs in. So definitely keep in touch, I would say, but also not only people that are senior to you, but your peers. I found, actually having a group of people at a similar level to me and keeping in touch with them was really helpful. You can kind of problem solve with them. If you're struggling to find work, they might know of something that they might have turned down a job because they're not available, and they might recommend you. So your peers are just as key as people who you're working for, I would say.
Excellent. And I know that we've got questions about how to navigate being a freelancer and any discrimination. So let's go down and let's talk about the fact that most people who work in TV production are freelancers, and it can be quite seasonal. You're not sure where your next job's coming from. There are times when you're out of work. How do you navigate that life? So how does the cycle of TV hiring look like to you all who are, I am assuming, freelancers? Who would like to take that?
I can mention just for in factual in documentaries, it's very seasonal actually. So I would say the cycle of it works is from February to about October, November. It's very busy. The summer is very, very busy. So a lot of people are in work then. And then from about November to January, it's very, very quiet. So that tends to be the cycle in terms of demand. In terms of, keeping yourself in work, I would say at least 6 weeks before you finish a job, email talent managers, start putting yourself out there. I'm coming free in X weeks, and then you are then on people's minds for the following job. So even when I'm in a job, I will never stop being in touch with talent managers. It's always worth meeting talent managers and making new connections, because you are, this industry is freelance. You have to keep that going if you want to stay in work, and you have to be proactive.
Yeah, I'd say,
sorry,
like I have like a spreadsheet of contacts that I might reach out to if I'm sort of coming towards the end of a contract, when I was kind of freelancing. And also as well, like not being afraid to step out into other opportunities as well. So I, did like some like social media consultancy on, an international arts festival, which, doesn't directly link to TV, but, it's always good to expand your horizons as well, especially if there's those drier spots in like January and stuff like that. It's always good to expand your horizons and, use things like Twitter and LinkedIn and all those kind of things as well, to find new contacts and to find new opportunities.
And I imagine at this early stage of most people's careers, they're thinking, I'm doing a bit of running, I'm doing a bit of studio, I'm in the gallery a bit. But how do you know which TV genres or departments are for you? Is there one of you who would talk about what the various departments and genres might look like and how you fit?
I was going to say, I think it's very much, well, for me, it was trial and error. You kind of have to try everything to see how much you like it. And I don't think that ever really stops, really, because, for example, I've pretty much always been within the news arena, but I've just done different departments within the news. But this year was the first year where I kind of stepped into entertainment. I worked at Big Breakfast over the summer, and let me tell you, it opened up a whole new genre to me, new skills, new type of people, new type of producers, and I learned so much in those few weeks. So I think it's very much a thing about being open-minded, and, with every department, every genre that you try your hand in, take notes, a mental note, or even like a written note, and think about what you've learned, what you liked, what you didn't like, And are there some things where you can say, definitely not, I'm not going to do that again? Because I know that that was something I knew with certain areas of news. I just knew that I didn't want to do this particular thing. But then there were other areas where I was like, actually, you know, it's not too bad. I probably could do that again. And there were others where I was like, definitely get me and I'm doing that again. So I think it's more about just trying your hand in as many things as you can, whichever kind of is available to you and open to you.
Absolutely. And then I think one of the things that people don't talk about enough when it comes to TV production is, listen, it's one of the best jobs in the world. We do for a job, we do for a job what most normal people call fun, right? So it's not the National Health Service, it's not life or death, it's genuinely getting up every day to make entertainment on different channels for different people. But with that comes stress and anxiety, because TV and media and film studios, things change all the time. It's like standing on shifting sands. Things are moving in the landscape all the time. So let's talk about navigating stress. In those early years, I think people aren't ready for the fact that stress and anxiety, it's a natural stress and anxiety that you get used to. It's not life or death, but things will change often, and you do have to pivot very quickly to change. How would you advise people when things get ugly? Have you got any examples of when things have gone wrong in your first 5 years that you can share, and how anxiety riding it was, and how did you deal with it?
I'm happy to step in, but I mean, I would look, it's always, you know, whatever you do will be stressful, but particularly, as Jasmine said, in TV, you know, there's lots of moving parts, particularly if you're in live TV, which is my background, my experience, that you can be, you know, as organized and you plan everything, and then things change last minute, or your editor wants everything changed, because that's often what happens. The people above you, they move with the news, and things change and the story moves. So, you know, they want you to scrap what you've done, change it all, and you've got however long to do it, and you've just got to do it. It doesn't matter, you just got to do it. So that was one of the biggest things that I had to get used to, and it was stressful. And particularly, you know, when I was working as a guest producer as well, because I was managing a lot of talent, a lot of guests for a live program. There were lots of different aspects of that program where guests had to be brought in and leave, etc. You know, and then I was also producing other bits on the side. And there was a point where I felt like I didn't have the infrastructure sort of around me in order. So I didn't feel like I was performing at my best, because I didn't feel like I had enough support around me. So that was something I sort of suffered for a while. And then I thought, well, no, because it's affecting how I'm performing in the role. So if I really want to do my best, bring my best to this role, then I've got to address it with my line manager. And I did. And I'm really glad I did that, because when things are on a fast turnover, people often don't see, you know, things like that, which are bothering certain people, or they just don't see it because they're on in you know, fast forward. So to address it, it does take a lot of courage. You kind of have to take a minute, write. I always say, you know, you need to write your points down that you're going to say, and why, and the solutions that you can come up with, instead of sort of just going with the problem. But it did make things better for me, in that there was, you know, my work, I could do it better because there was more then in place for me to do it in that way. But yeah, it can be stressful, you know, particularly, I'm sure everyone will agree with me, but also going on shoots and things like that, when things change last minute, or somebody you had, you know, thought you had access to, you didn't get access to anymore, or they changed their mind, or you know, they say something that you can't use, or it's always about being reactive. But also, as Jasmine always used to say to us at London 360, at the end of the day, you know, it's just TV. Like, it is TV, but it's also just TV. We're not in A&E, you know, resuscitating people. Thank God we're making TV, and yeah, it's not life or death. So you just got to do your best and roll with it. And if things change and move, then they change and move, and you've done your best.
Something
Have you got any horror stories?
Sorry.
Come on, you guys. I know you've got horror stories. What's gone wrong for you? What's the worst thing that's gone wrong? I remember once I was in the Big Breakfast studio when I was a runner, and I was so fascinated with all the celebrities that were there on set that I forgot to get the next prop ready. And actually, I wasn't ready. And we came back out of the ad break, and Chris Evans, who was the presenter, very zany, a total TV genius, he said to the viewers live, to the nation, he said, okay, everyone, for our next thing, we were supposed to have this prop on set, but guess what? Jasmine, and the camera went like that onto me because I was on the floor preparing props. He went, Jasmine is so obsessed with the celebrities in the studio that she doesn't have the prop on the stage yet. And I just sat there and I was like a deer in headlights, and I never, ever was distracted again by celebrities. Give me some horror stories and how you dealt with
Oh my God.
Yeah, the nation saw me. The nation, I was put on blast to the whole country. Anyone got any horror stories? This is called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Yeah, I have one. When I started out in TV, I was fact checking across a series. It was a Channel 5 series called World's Toughest Truckers, which is very different from what I'm working on now. So it shows that, you know, you can, if you start in one genre, you can move into another. But I was fact checking scripts. They were basically doing the voiceover. It was coming up to the point where they're doing voiceover for this series. So I had to research, you know, how the kilometers between one city to another in India, all these facts. So this was, you know, I was only a few weeks into the role, and there were mistakes in those facts, and those facts were read out by the voiceover and were aired. And so that came back on me, and that was awful. I then had to triple check them. At the time I had a mentor who they assigned me at the company, and that helped me actually sort of get through that situation, because I was just, you know, as a junior person, as someone very green, you think you've made the worst mistake in the world and you're going to get fired. And he said to me that, you know, really don't worry about it. I'd made mistakes early in my career where I got something wrong in the credits, and a series producer said to him he'd never work in the industry, and he's the exec producer of that company. So I've never made that mistake again, and that's what he said to me as well. I said, once you make a mistake in the industry, you will never make that mistake again, but you have to make mistakes in order to grow and get better. So don't feel that you need to come in and do everything right. You know, you're there to learn, and actually it's about owning those mistakes and admitting that you have made it and what you are going to do about it to fix it. I think that shows you in a better light than, you know, sort of worrying about it, which is what I learned.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing I always say to everyone is we all make mistakes. As soon as you own it and hands up immediately, it doesn't go any further and doesn't get any worse. I think the worst thing I see with new young juniors is people try to either ignore it, deflect the blame to someone else, or say it wasn't their fault. I think just put your hands up and go, oh my God, I'm really sorry, I've messed that up. Please let me fix it. And then, yeah, keep it moving. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I was just going to say I have one. I remember when I was working at ITV News in Yorkshire and Leeds. And so that was around the time when ITV News had just launched their kind of website where you could, you know, upload videos and pictures and stuff like that. And so I had to like do a news story about football. I know absolutely nothing about football, and still don't really, to be, if I'm really honest with you. And but I thought I really knew what I was putting up, and I didn't really have the green light to put it up. But then it was kind of like almost like a second version of something that I had written that was already a draft that had been approved by this one correction. So I just went ahead and posted it anyway. But then the sports reporter came marching over being like, oh, you've got this wrong and blah, 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 blah. You need to change it right now. And so obviously that's a very small thing that happened, and it's not that, you know, it's not the end of the world. But I remember my editor at the time came to me, because I was a trainee then, and she said to me, look, you know, as a journalist or as a TV producer, your job is to know a little about a lot. And from that day, that's always stuck with me, that don't jump the gun like I did that day. You know, make sure you do get the green light with whatever you publish or put on air. But second of all, you do really need to know a little about a lot in this job, because you're not necessarily going to be a specialist in a particular area, or you might be, but even then you still need to have like a broad range of knowledge across different subjects.
Absolutely. And I think the thing that we've covered here is the overarching importance of hard skills and soft skills. You've all mentioned the fact that you have to be 360 multi-skilled, try and do a bit of shooting, a bit of editing, a bit of scripting. Soft skills are those other interpersonal personality skills. So now we've gone to the point of we've done bad and ugly, right? But now let's talk about promoting yourself. One of the questions in the question box from Fozia is about being a runner and how you know when you're at the next stage and when you want to promote yourself. How do you know when it's time to promote yourself? What are the top signs that you're ready for something new? And on the flip side, when do you know it's time to leave the role that you're in to go to something else? Who would like to take that?
I can take that very quickly. I think one of the things that you need to remember is when you're in a role, you're there to do that role and to do it well. But I think when you get to a point where you feel that you can do that role, you know, with your eyes closed, back to front, inside out, and you know absolutely everything about that role, you know, that's when you can start to think about, okay, how do I move to the next stage? Because I think it's very important to not kind of be stagnant and don't be stale. You know, that's something I've also been guilty of, even at this stage of my career. Sometimes I can just enjoy a workplace so much and enjoy my team so much, and I end up staying there a bit too long. I think it's very, very important to, you know, be mindful of how you're personally developing, not only as a person, but also in a work environment. If you can actually ask yourself, you know, and really have, you know, some true self-awareness about how much you know that role and how much more or there isn't more to learn, it's at that point that you can know, okay, I'm now ready for the next stage. Because I think sometimes, especially in TV, you know, we all have big egos, so we all think that we can do amazing things, and you know, we can, but I think it's about asking yourself, you know, some real hard questions about, are you truly the best that you can be at this role? Like, can you not get any better? And if you can honestly say yes to that, that's when I think that you can step up.
Amazing.
I agree. Just sorry to jump in. I agree with that. And I think the sign is that when you feel like you're just not learning anything anymore, then that is definitely a sign that you're ready. And obviously it's hard because sometimes you're still stuck there because you can't find the next thing and you're in that difficult position. But I think that obviously, as Funmi just mentioned, there's a certain level of, let's say you're in a job and you're enjoying it and you feel like you're doing it really well and you're confident. It's about like taking those steps so that you become uncomfortable again, because you won't change and develop if you're comfortable. It just won't happen. So when you go into that next role, you know, you're going to feel uncomfortable because you're a bit of a fish out of water. You don't really know how everything works. You don't know who to talk to for this matter. You're learning. It's all new processes, different companies, you know, do things differently, and also skills you haven't done before because you're becoming more senior. So it is just be comfortable with the uncomfortable and know that when that's happening, it's a good thing because you're learning and you're growing and you're developing.
And something I found, oh, sorry to jump in.
Go on, Michael.
Just
10 seconds, be brief.
Something I found really helpful in terms of thinking about promotions and problems and things that might, you know, occur, is having like mentors that you can go to and ask questions to. Jasmine knows this because I always ask her a question. So it's always good to have people in the industry that you know that you can turn to when it comes to thinking about promotions and thinking about problems that might arise.
Yes, grab yourself some mentors, a board of directors, people you can
Yes.
ask random questions to. So like Michael, you can WhatsApp me randomly any time of day or night and go, someone just said this. What does this mean?
What do I do?
Someone asked me about this. How much should I be getting paid? Right,
Yeah.
let's go to questions because I'm so aware that we are running out of time. Some of the questions we've already answered. So for example, Marek, your question about what type of skills we look for in television, we did at the start. Don't forget, everyone, the recording of this webinar will be out next week on the RTS website. So you can go back and have a look at those. But let's have a look at the questions. What's the best place to start in TV, would you say? Would it be as a runner? Do we all agree that a runner would be the best place, or are there any other alternative answers to that one?
Sorry, I was just going to say, runner is a great place to start, obviously, just because you learn from the bottom up. However, I've worked with lots of people who have done, you know, journalism masters and journalism degrees, and I've noticed that they've been able to skip that and gone straight to researcher just because of their experience. But I think a runner is a great place to start because, and it's not to say you won't move up quickly. It's just that you get in there from the ground running and you can meet loads of people and also get a flavor for which areas that you think you might want to work in or might work best in.
Right, I know what it's like when you put Q&A questions in things and people never get to them. So I'm going to say, let's try and get through as many as we can. If your answers can be 20 seconds, you guys, we will get through them all. Right, Meg Clayton asks, should in-house studio jobs be avoided early on in careers? Are freelance contracts more advantageous or make you more employable? Fozia, as you're at studios, would you say should in-house studio jobs be avoided early on in your careers? Do you have any ideas about that one?
I don't think there's a right answer for that, but I would say in-house can be great. I went in-house for a year at a production company. That is a good opportunity to move around different productions, to stay and work for a longer length of time, to build contacts. If it's a big company, I think it could be hugely beneficial. But equally, I know people who within that space of time have moved from different companies and have built up their contact base and worked on a variety of projects. So there's no sort of hard and fast rule. I think if you like that company and they're giving you a variety of work and work that you enjoy, then fantastic, but equally, if you are freelancing and going job to job, you're equally learning a lot. There's no
Perfect. 20 seconds done. Andy Davis says, what are the biggest challenges you all face in your roles? But I can see, Funmi, you're typing an answer to him about, do you use shorthand? Do you want to just say it quickly?
I was going to say, I've got my 100 words per minute, but I've never used it. However, it's good to have because you never know when you might use it again.
All right. Ross McCatty, if your long-term goal is to work in scripted television, is it damaging to get a job in unscripted television? I think damaging's doing a lot of hard lifting there. Anyone?
Yeah, go ahead, Julie.
No, I'm just going to say I haven't worked in scripted, but I just think that no journey is a wrong journey. And I just think that, again, the sideward step, it's whatever you can get into instead of waiting for the perfect thing. So I don't think it's damaging at all. Not at all.
Okay, anonymous attendee says they're really interested in joining the news side of things in TV. They only have experience of working as a runner for scripted entertainment and a floor manager for a shopping channel. What's the quickest and easiest way to get into the news industry?
I think best thing to do is to contact maybe the production manager of a particular news show, email them and say that you're really interested in these are the skills and these are the experiences that you have. And can you come and do work experience? Can you shadow? Can you go out with a reporter for one day? Anything that you can offer will be good enough, and they should be able to take you on board because news are always desperate for people to help out. So.
Okay, Andy Davis, is there a line between chasing a dream or being a pest to a company? Did we answer that in the first part? I feel like we did that one, didn't we? Marek says they're a combined honours student studying film, radio and television and history. They have an interest in documentary making. How can they apply that interest in television?
So moving into documentaries, is that what that question is alluding to, Jasmine? I would, again, watch documentaries that you love, look for those companies who make those documentaries and those exec producers who have overseen those projects, and drop them an email and start conversations and start getting in the room with them. That's often how people have got in. I would say, just make sure you watch a variety and know what type of documentaries you like and who is making that, what other companies making those programs, and approach them.
Thank you. David talks about tips for handling setbacks. I think that we covered that when we talked about resilience earlier on. So have a look back at that answer. Someone else mentioned Ahmed Ali. Hopefully no one here has had to deal with discrimination or bigotry in the workplace, but how have you dealt with a difficult situation, particularly as some production companies may not have an HR department? I think that one is about giving and receiving feedback. I think if you can become quite positive in the way that you give and receive feedback. So ask your line managers every week, regularly, whenever you have a check-in with them, how am I doing? What could I be doing differently? How could I be doing even better? That way, I think you have a heads up much earlier if things are going wrong or taking a wrong turn and your line manager hasn't mentioned it to you. I hope that that's helpful. Anastasia says they're building their own TV production company, have done some presenting on the side. What do you advise as I'm just starting out? I think it's always about reaching out and being a part of as many different TV organisations, conversations as possible. So something like the RTS Futures, Screen Skills, BAFTA, all of these organisations have numerous opportunities for you to get involved, for you to get in training courses. Those opportunities will just come flying in front of you as you start doing that stuff. We are nearing the end. So panelists, if you are looking in the Q&A box, are there any questions that you are thinking we haven't answered that you could do a quick answer on? I think we've covered most things. We've done tips on networking. Michael, as the genius networker that you are, you got any final tips on networking?
Yeah, I think just network with, with as many people as you can, and everyone can be useful, and just be really delightful, as Jasmine says, consistently delightful. Follow up, connect, network with people, and yeah, I think it's just a really brilliant thing to get at. And yeah, just know your brand as well, know like who you are and what your values are and what you can offer, and try and have an elevator pitch. So a few sentences that you can say to someone when you meet them that encompasses who you are. Another tip as well for networking is, if you've got a TV show that you really like, look in the credits, find them on LinkedIn, work out their email address. Most companies have a standardized thing, first name dot last name at BBC, for example. So yeah, look for people that work in what you want to work with and connect with them, and yeah, keep contacting them.
To finish on a high, can I get literally 5 to 10 seconds of each of you telling us what your best moments are? This is the good, the bad, and the ugly. Let's finish on the good. So highest moments when you've thought, wow, I work in this industry, this is really what I do. Is there something you've been really excited on? 5 to 10 seconds. Who's going first?
I'll go first.
Go.
So a few months ago, I just started at GMB, and I did a live OB in Belfast, which was for the Prince's Trust, where we surprised a gentleman who'd worked and volunteered for the Prince's Trust for like 20 years. Lots of things went wrong. He had a hearing aid, he couldn't hear. Our second camera went down, but it all went really well in the end. And it was one of those moments, Funmi knows because she helped me a little bit with it, but that it just paid off. And it was one of those, those moments that you won't forget, because it made such an impact to the presenters, to everyone in the gallery. So it was a real good, a successful moment in TV.
I watched that. It was brilliant television, really emotional, feel good factor. Next.
I think mine might be, this sounds terrible, but when I was working at Big Breakfast this year, because just the sheer amount of people that were working on this one show, it felt like a film set, and the different celebrities that you meet and your peers that you're working with, it doesn't feel like work. And I'm blessed to be the kind of person where I don't dread Monday morning. I think a lot of people do, but in this job and in this industry, I think we're quite lucky that we don't. And I think that working on that production specifically, because it's so different from news, really highlighted that for me.
Excellent. Fozia?
I recently worked on a documentary with Tom Daly, where we went to Commonwealth countries where it's illegal to be gay from an athlete perspective. And we went to Pakistan, Jamaica, and they were amazing trips. We were filming on the beach in Jamaica, so I just couldn't believe that that was my job. But also, we were talking to people about a very sensitive issue who'd never had the platform to share their stories, and that felt really purposeful. And they were very happy with the end product, which makes me feel like I can sleep at night, that they were satisfied with it. So that felt really rewarding.
Amazing. Michael?
I think just when I got my first assistant producer job, was just kind of felt like all my hard work had paid off. I'm now really lucky to have a staff job at Channel 4, which I know is really difficult in this industry. So just getting to that position and being like, wow, I've actually kind of got where I wanted to be, was just a really amazing feeling.
And it's such an amazing feeling for me hearing from you four, because honestly, when I think of your early journeys and where you are now, I've watched you jump through the hoops and leap over the hurdles. And, with all those thoughts out there, it is gone 2 p.m. So we do have to close. We could talk to you forever. So Share, follow these people on Twitter, Instagram, share your handles in the chat if your chat's going to be available. Maybe Jemima can add it onto the video afterwards, but it is time for us to close. So my heartfelt thanks to Fozia, Jordaan, Funmi and Michael. I really appreciate you. We appreciate you sharing all your feedback with us. Thank you to you in our audience out there today for joining us for this RTS Futures panel. Thanks to Jemima at the RTS for hooking it up and putting it all together. Please do sign up to the RTS Futures page for more free sessions like this. There are so many amazing workshops and information about how you can be part of the TV industry. And, you know, all that remains is for me to say, until next time, have a great rest of your day and see you in your first 5 years of television. Thanks.